Thursday, August 20th at 5 p.m. So there will be a sign up for that, I believe.
Great time. Well, it's good to be back with you after the week off. And, animals, and there might even be some people as well that have lost their lives. But, I just wanted to pray before we get into this. As a church, we can pray as well. And I'll just leave a little bit of silence. And silence is okay. You can sit in it, feel awkward about it, use it, whatever you'd like. And then I'll pray and we'll get going. So, yeah, you can just be praying to yourself here right now. Father, we know you control everything we see, we touch, we hear. This whole physical reality, Lord, that you're above it. And might you just hear the prayers of your people, I'm sure all over this province, for the fires, for people losing homes, people who need safety and comfort. So we ask that you are over this. You're controlling the wind and the flames and the rain to come, Lord, that you protect even our homes. That was a fire that came so close, that people would be supporting each other, uplifting each other in this town and everywhere, Lord. And we think of Summerland and people who've lost so much, and what a reality that to be left with nothing, it seems. So, Father, we just ask that protection, your hand on this. Amen. So, good morning. We left Peter last time in the home of Peter. Jesus is where he's at. This is a couple weeks ago. You can remember back. So, go listen back if you want. Think back. We got it all on YouTube. It's okay to watch stuff on YouTube, sermons that you missed. In fact, it's preferred. And there's a few key things we saw, right? We saw this small reality behind Peter, right? He's a normal guy. He had responsibilities. And the main thing was he reorientated his life to follow Jesus. And sometimes that's the hardest thing for us because we love comfort, we love it our way, we love possession, we love everything about, Jesus, you ask too much, and we don't want to rearrange. And so we saw that Peter had still these responsibilities, and he followed Jesus and reorientated his life. And then we see him healing this woman, his mother-in-law, this marginalized person, and he heals the individual. That he comes to you. It's not just this broad, general religion that we're just kind of following. Jesus wants to know you. And then he kind of goes on and shows that his power is actually limitless in your life, that he heals the one and sees her, but then heals the crowds, the demon-possessed and the sick, this difference, right? That's not just the exact same. That sometimes we talked a little bit about this oppression, of we open ourselves up to things that are strongholds in our lives, that we make agreements with sin, that it's not that bad. I can just kind of manage this. And basically that comes to this, that you need Jesus. That's it in your whole life. You need him. You can't achieve it. You can't do it. You can't outrun your shame. You can't, break sin patterns on your own because you're human, flesh and bone. You need Christ. And so this is where we get it. This is where we're picking up on where Jesus is in Peter's home and what he's been doing. So if you go to Matthew 8, you can head over there. And we've been going verse by verse that and it takes a while. And I want to be able to pull things out for you and actually be able to hear and see and read what he has for you, not just glaze over books. So this is why we're, verse for verse for verse, and we're going through this. So Matthew 8:18, and we see a couple things here that we're going to go through of discipleship problems. And so this is what it says. When Jesus saw a large crowd around him, he gave the order to go to the other side of the sea. And so just to give you, a quick little, get this in your mind. If you're not Lynn and you haven't been to Israel 15 times, let's get this in our head of what this looks like. How many times, Lynn? 3, okay, almost 15. And so Jesus is in Capernaum, okay? This is his home base sort of for his ministry. He's in Capernaum a lot of the time. And Capernaum was on the Sea of Galilee, so just a little image for you. It's not actually a sea, though. It's a big lake. So it's just called a sea because of translation of what's been passed down through tradition. And if you need to know more about Galilee, talk to Lynn. I'm not the guy, okay? I haven't been there yet. She's going to bring me next year. And she'll go over the fourth. No. So it's this large, fresh body of water, and it's the lowest fresh body of water on earth, okay? So it's surrounded by, these cliffs and these valleys. It's called the Jordan Rift Valley. So this is we'll come back to this a little bit later, but to give you a picture of where we're set right now, where Jesus is going. So you would actually descend down to the lake. It was down. It was far down. Things were up above it. And you might be confused because you thought you came to church this morning, but you came to earth science class. So this is your context. And so he's bringing the disciples, and he says, there's this big crowd. Let's just go to the other side of the sea. And we don't know exactly why he's doing this. Maybe it's to get away to silence and solitude, right? We have a lot of things that he would do. He'd go pray. There could be something on the other side that he said, hey, I have to go deal with this. I need to go fix something. We don't exactly know. But I love just something that kind of stood out quick. I wasn't even going to talk about this, but, as they're making their way down to these boats, you think about the disciples, right? There's 4 of them or more who were these fishermen. And they're going down, and Jesus said, hey, let's go down to the boats. Let's do the boats. He's always using these boats. And it's not like a Kelowna boat rental system, okay? He's not going down there and saying, hey, I need this boat to get across the lake. It's not how it works. You kind of have to have access to boats. And so these fishermen are like, man, Jesus, I really thought I was done with this life. That's what I'm imagining that they would be like, is he's saying, hey, let's go back to the boats. And like, I left the boats behind when you called me, Jesus. I don't want to go back to this thing. You keep bringing me back to these boats, this old part of their life. And he's saying, well, yeah, because guess what? I'm going to redeem it. And I just thought this was an interesting little kind of tidbit here, was they used to fish as a way of life. They would have to fish, go to the boats from the time they were young and boys with their fathers, and they would be learning. This is all they knew. And they probably were so excited when Jesus said, come follow me, because it was finally something different, something completely new. And they might have thought they're going to leave that whole life behind them. I'm never going on a boat again. And Jesus says, actually, I need your boats. I need them again. I need to use this thing. I need to redeem this thing in your life. And I think sometimes we just are like the disciples, is thinking about this, that sometimes in my life when I say, well, Jesus, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do this. We think it's okay. I can completely transition to something new. I'm going to go overseas. I'm gone. Don't talk to me. I'm out. Completely new. And Jesus says that's not how it necessarily works. That's not what following me looks like. And he redeems that now their boats are being used for fishing for people. Remember when Nehemiah gets called to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, and he's going to rebuild the walls. He has this call in his life, and he's gotten permission to go, and he's arriving at the walls. Do you know how they rebuilt it? They used stone after stone after stone of what was the rubble that had been destroyed of the walls. And it wasn't that, God said, I'm going to provide for you brand new stones. I'm going to provide for you brand new wood and mortar. They had to go and work meticulously through this rubble, finding the best spots, the best, torn down wall, and rebuild it brick by brick by brick by brick. And it wasn't a brand new thing. God rebuilt from the foundation that was torn down and said, I'm going to make something new from here. I'm going to make something better, something stronger maybe. And the same thing's for your life. The same thing happens when you're discipling under Jesus, when he calls you in and back to the boat. You might think, man, I've just left all of it behind. I'm just completely new. I don't want any part of it. And he says, actually, the rubble of your life is what I'm going to rebuild you from. A new foundation. All these things that you think that you can just throw away, actually, I'm going to redeem them. I'm going to make them worth something, right? Maybe it's a relationship in your marriage and you're struggling. You say, I just don't want to be here anymore. I want to leave. I can't stay in this. And he's saying, listen, you might be done to throw in the towel and just go leave the rubble, leave it broken, leave it just stranded. And he says, I want to rebuild it. I'm going to redeem it. I'm going to give it new purpose. Maybe it's your job and you're just suffering through it and you say, man, this is not what I want to be doing in my life. I just want to completely transition to something new. And he says, actually, I want to redeem this. I want to rebuild this. I don't know what this could be in your life, something where you just want it gone in a new direction. He says, actually, like Nehemiah, I'm going to rebuild that wall with the exact stones that are being torn down. So this is kind of the position that he's bringing these disciples into. Let's go back to the boats. Let's redeem this. You've used to fish for a living. Now let's fish for people. And I just thought those were fun little notes of how he uses the things that we think we leave behind to actually minister to people, to change our lives. It continues, and it says this in verse 19. So this is where this discipleship problem happens. So a large crowd, they're going down the sea, and it said, a scribe approached him and said, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus told him, foxes have dens and birds of the sky have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Okay, so if you remember who a scribe is, we've seen some of these religious leaders, right? They come up against Jesus often. They're asking him questions. They don't trust him. They're questioning him. And so when we read this and we're like, a scribe comes to Jesus and says, hey, I want to follow you, we probably think that's a win, right? That's awesome. That's the best disciple you want to have in your life. This is like a win for Jesus' ministry. He's going to be so smart. He's going to teach people. He's well educated. He would be copying scriptures. He would be teaching them. And in theory, this is the best case scenario. Like Jesus is winning, right? He's winning the day. The scribes are now wanting to follow him. And Jesus basically gives him a non-answer, which is the best thing about Jesus in your life when you ask him things and, hey, I want to follow you, I'm going to do this. And he says, well, guess what? I don't have anywhere to sleep. I have nowhere to go home. I don't really own anything. The birds do, the foxes do, but I don't. And he poses this reality for this guy that following him is not about a destination. It's not about the comfort. It's not about what you can get. It's about the journey that you take with Jesus. And so he deduces when the scribe comes and asks Jesus, hey, let me follow you wherever you go. He looks at this guy and says, well, do you understand what my motives are? Because I can see what yours are. Do you understand that I'm not trying to get somewhere? Do you understand that I'm not just trying to achieve something? I'm not trying to arrive. Do you understand that this isn't about what you can just gain from me? He says it's just about being and journeying. He had ulterior motives. He'd be the most educated. He'd be right there teaching with the crowds that followed him. Jesus was popular, right? The crowds followed him, and this is probably attractive. This scribe would say, I can arrive because if the people see me teach and how educated I am, I can further myself if I follow and attach myself to Jesus. And this is the thing, that following Jesus isn't about what he can give you. It's about journeying with him. And I think a lot of us come to Jesus because we want what he can give. And I'm not saying he wouldn't give to you and that he doesn't give to you. But if our motive for discipleship to Jesus is, I need to receive, give me all the things, take me somewhere, let me achieve something, you've missed the point. This overzealous guy, that's all he wanted was, bring me somewhere, Jesus, somewhere great. And he says, actually, all you're going to get is a journey with me. Every time Victoria and I go travel somewhere, you don't want to be in our house. It's not like that crazy, but we fall on opposite sides of the spectrum of how we arrive somewhere. And maybe you've had this experience in your own relationships. But if you know Enneagram at all, so Victoria's a type 4 on the Enneagram, okay? So she's very much like creative and a deep thinker. She thinks outside the box. She looks for, meaning and beauty in everything. So she's this very high intentionality person, okay? That's a type 4. If you don't know what Enneagram is, go and do it. It's great for your relationship, great for church stuff. Then you can be like, I'm this, and I say, I'm this. And then we go read about how we interact, and then we don't have to talk in person. We just get it. And now sometimes when we're trying to get out of the house, okay, when we're trying to go somewhere, like arrive, like think about me on vacation this past week. This is literally the scenario, okay? We wake up. This is Victoria. She wakes up. This is how she does her life. Don't quote me on this. You can go talk to her about it after. She knows I'm saying this, okay? I promise. She wakes up. She's a 4. She thinks about her coffee she's going to have or that I'm going to make for her. She slowly packs her bags, She'll pack a bit and then she'll do something for a little bit. She'll come back, pack a little bit more. She can't find anything because sometimes that's how it works. And she's packing, the most random things, okay? She's her art supplies. She's bringing like boxes of pencil crayons and markers and these books and all this stuff. And I'm just going, hey, sure, that's great. Like, you can bring those things because they're going to bring meaning and significance to the journey. And then I go out, I know I'm packing my stuff, and I come back to the kitchen. There's just coolers everywhere now. There's coolers everywhere. There's snacks being packed. There's drink cooler. There's a snack cooler. And then, this is crazy. This happens. This is real. The oven is turned on. We're trying to walk out the door. Literally, I've packed the car, and she's now baking because it's going to make the journey better. It's going to be something that's so tasty and amazing, and she's literally baking as I'm trying to walk out the door. The kitchen is crazy. It's a mess. Everything is everywhere, and I'm like, what are we doing here? Are we going? Are we going to arrive today? Is this the goal? And I'm just like, seriously? And now if you look at me, okay, Enneagram again. I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, if you know what Enneagram is. 8 and a 4, power couple, they say, just so you know. But also very, very spicy, you might say. Like dynamic, bursting, like, whatever. Don't too spicy. And so I have other plans, right? I'm like organized. That's an 8. I have a clear vision. This is what needs to happen. This is where I want to go, where I need to be. This is my core need. They have core needs in Enneagram. It's kind of control and safety. Not in control of like I'm going to control you, but in show me the plan. I need what is going on. What are we doing? And so we're the exact opposite. Complete exact opposite. I'm over here. I woke up, packed my 5 things and my book, and I'm ready to go. And now I'm waiting for Victoria, her amazing stuff, and baking. So I just want to arrive. I just want to get to the place. I want to get the thing from the place that I'm going to go to and experience the rest, which never actually comes when you just always want to arrive, by the way. And I want that feeling of being relaxed. And it's chaos because when we both live in this side of our spectrums, it never works for us in our household. And that's just a little glimpse into our life. But here's what I do know. Here's what I know is that my wife, Victoria, gets discipleship way more than I ever will. She gets it. She understands. She can relate to what it means to follow Jesus because she is so okay to sit in the journey. Jesus saw the scribe, and he knew that all he wanted was the arrival, like what I want. Just bring me there. Get me there. I don't want to stop. I don't want to slow down. Give me the thing now, Jesus. And traveling with my wife over the last 10 years has taught me something. That her baking as we're literally walking out the door, her looking for that book that we can read together, finding the games, packing the coolers full of snacks, Googling places along the way that we're going to stop. Because if it's my way, I'm just drive-thrus and just, Tim Hortons and drive-through. And bless his heart, my son is just like my wife. We'll go to Tim Hortons and he'll be like, Dad, can we go sit down inside? I'm like, no, please let me go through the drive-through. But we'll stop. We'll go inside, have a muffin and a coffee, right? She's looking for thrift stores and coffee shops along the way, places for the kids to stop and run. And it's shown me this, that it's a cliche for a reason. It's about the journey, not the destination. It couldn't be more true about following Jesus, right? Because it's about enjoying the small moments on the path. It's about seeing God's vision for my family and the company in my family, learning and seeing new experiences along the way, learning to be slow, practicing stillness, to live in presence, not in anxiety of getting somewhere. And it's interesting because if you've ever traveled alone, you understand that it is about who you're with, right? Like if you come and you're on this amazing hike and you arrive at this top and you're looking over this beautiful lake and you're there alone, not that it's not fun, but it's often empty because you just want to share it. And that's why we take photos, and that's why we show people, and that's why we'll meet up with random people in hostels to then take them on the journey with us, because we want to journey with someone. And this is the thing, if you just want to arrive somewhere by yourself always, you will end up lonely and you will end up empty, just with yourself. And what Jesus is inviting you into is to be a sojourner. And a sojourner is someone who has no home, no place to say, this earth is not our home. I'm sojourning with Jesus that one day I will be in the kingdom with him in heaven. But for now, all I want is him. And that's what his offering is to you. Come journey with me, experience me, learn from me. You don't have to get somewhere. You don't have to use me. It's not about that. It's about how you can be with me. And if you're trying to arrive, you're going to just arrive alone and empty. You think of Israel in the wilderness. They forgot who they were traveling with. Right? They were in the wilderness for so long. They just wanted to arrive in the promised land, and they died in the wilderness, alone and empty, abandoned, and said, we don't want to journey with you anymore, God. Just bring us to the place. And he said, fine, I will leave you here then. And the same will happen in your life. If you are so desperate to get something and somewhere, then you are just going to miss Jesus and the life he could have for you, because he'll say, I'll leave you then in the desert. You're not going to get to the place. Discipleship to Jesus is trusting his pace. Have you ever trusted the pace of Jesus? Slow down. There's this analogy. Jesus walked everywhere. Why are you trying to sprint? Why are you just trying to get ahead of him? There's no point to arrive before him. There's nothing there. He walked at the pace of a slow walk everywhere he went. And do you trust the pace when you disciple under him? Are you going to trust that it might not be right now, it might not be in a few years, but actually he has positions and plans and spots for you where he's going to grow you? And are you going to trust the pace of Jesus? And then it goes on to another problem. So we're eager sometimes. We're over-eager. Give me it now. And then there's another discipleship problem, and this is the other problem. So another man approaches him and says, Lord, another of his disciples, first, just let me go bury my father. But Jesus told him, follow me and let the dead bury their own dead. So we had someone overeager, and now what we have is someone who comes and says, Jesus, I want to follow you. And we talked a little bit about this, but just not yet. I want to be with you, but there's something I got to do. I want to follow you. I want my life to look different. I want my practices to change. I want all the life that you can give me, but I just don't necessarily need it right now. I just need to go bury my father. And there's a little bit of disagreement here. Some people think his father was dead and he had to go literally bury him. What I would hold is that his father was just old, and his father needed maybe help with the inheritance and with the property and with whatever. So he said, just let me go back for a bit. I'll hang out with my dad. I'll make sure he's fine. The family's okay. And once everything's just perfectly settled, then I can actually come do this, Jesus. And this is like the two paths when we talked about the gates, right? Enter the gate. He does not want to enter. He's so obsessed with, let me make sure my life is fine, and then I can follow you, Jesus. And we are so entrapped by this because, like I said, we love our comforts. We love things to be fine before we commit to Jesus. You hear it in young people all the time. I just want to have fun in my 20s. I want to party. I want to go to raves. I want to sleep around. I want to try some drugs. I'm going to do all this stuff. And then one day, when I need it, maybe I'll follow Jesus. Maybe, when I start a family and I start looking at morals and ethics, maybe that's when Jesus makes sense in my life. And they're slow to following Jesus because they want to gratify sin. And we like to gratify ourselves instead of follow Christ because it feels good in the time, and we are slow to follow him. We want to do the things first before we essentially have to abandon life for Christ. D.A. Carson said this: the scribe was too quick to promise, this man was too slow to perform. Soon, just not yet. And it's kind of this interesting contention where we often viewed following Christ, discipleship to Jesus, as there's no right way. But apparently there kind of is. And I think the right way is this: you get Jesus now. Not later, not when you're ready, not what he can give you, but trusting his pace here and now. It's not something you can contemplate till you're ripe and ready, right? It's not this trial run. We all love subscriptions these days. Jesus isn't your subscription that, oh, this new show came out. I'm going to use a new email to go get that show for the next 7 days and binge watch it. That's not how Jesus works. He wants you to follow him now. And notice here, this kind of interesting thing is that Jesus is not begging for followers. And sometimes we get this wrong. He doesn't need you. He wants you. He does not need you to follow him. That's not how God works. He's not begging you, please come, come. He says, this is who I am. Do you want this life? And he's actually doing the opposite, where these people are coming saying, I want to follow you. And he says, you sure you do? Are you sure you want this life? Because I can't promise anything for you in the comfort realm and in the immediacy realm and in the things you're going to accomplish. Are you sure you want this? And sometimes we need to evaluate and ask ourselves, do we want to disciple under Jesus? Because he doesn't make it attractive. He actually makes it kind of hard. He makes it kind of require something of us. He turns people away. He doesn't want you just to be so erratic and say, give me the things. He doesn't want you to come in half-heartedly say, yeah, maybe, Jesus. He says, I just want to journey with you. Paul put it like this in Philippians. He said this, that more than that, I also consider everything to be loss in view of the surpassing value of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord. Because of him, I have suffered the loss of all things and considered them as dung, so that I may gain Christ. This is a man who discipled under Jesus, and he says, I consider everything else loss, suffering, pain, all this stuff. If I have to go through it to have Christ, that's fine. If I have to lose stuff to have Jesus, that's okay. And we sometimes fall in the mentality of, is Christ worth the gain? And I think sometimes we say no. And Paul is backing up this claim above, asking this question of, who is this man worthy of loss and of suffering? Who is Jesus? And the disciples are going to ask that question in a second here, but this is where it moves on. So the disciples in tow, they're moving down to the water. These disciples who want to follow you, Jesus, they're going past this discipleship problem. And then it goes into this, and it says, as he got into the boat, his disciples followed him. And suddenly a violent storm arose on the sea, so that the boat was being swamped by the waves, but Jesus kept sleeping. Okay, so now we can go back to this picture a little bit. I have those storm photos. Those are from the Sea of Galilee, just so you know. And then this next one is the boat. I just want to show you, because sometimes visuals are great. The one on the right's a little rough, I know, okay? Don't judge me on that one. But they call that the Jesus boat. And this is kind of how big the boat would be. They found that boat on the Sea of Galilee. And so to build out this picture, those are the boats that they're in. They're on this large lake. It's positioned in this place where these strong winds come down the valleys and down these cliffs. It's the Jordan Rift. And so at one moment, the lake could be very calm. And immediately, Lynn, did you have any storms when you were there? Was it crazy? There we go. Lynn said she was there. Immediately, this water becomes violent. It becomes windy and it upchurns. This is from the land in the book. This is how it was described by W.N. Thomas. He said, on the occasion, we subsequently pitched our tents at the shore and remained for 3 days and nights exposed to this tremendous wind. We had to double pin all the tent ropes and frequently were obliged to hang with our whole weight upon them to keep the quivering tabernacle from being carried up bodily in the air. The whole lake, as we had it, was lashed into fury. The waves repeatedly rolled up to our tent door, tumbling over the ropes with such violence as to carry away the tent pins. And moreover, these winds are not only violent, but they come down suddenly, and often when the sky is perfectly clear. I once went to swim near the hot baths, and before I was aware, a wind came rushing over the cliffs with such force that it was with great difficulty that I could regain the shore. So this is a guy who traveled all through the Holy Land, documenting what it is, what it looks like, the different sites. And this is him talking about the Sea of Galilee. So when you're thinking about this, it's not just like some small waves. This lake completely turned to turmoil, and they're in this tiny boat, 12 of them, packed in, and they're going across the waters, and Jesus is sleeping. It's a crazy scene. It would never be able to happen these days, right? And it might have been really calm, but it just comes right down once they get on the water, and these waves can get up to 5 to 7 feet, okay? So that's a bit of the scene. And it says this, okay? So suddenly a violent storm, Jesus is sleeping, the boat's being swamped. So the disciples came and woke him up, saying, "Lord, save us, we're going to die." And he said to them, "Why are you afraid, you of little faith?" Then he got up, rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. The men were amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and the sea obey him." In Matthew Henry's commentary, I love this insightful word picture he draws out. He said that many would be content to go the land way to heaven. And I love that he says that because the disciples following Jesus onto the boat is putting your faith in your life in the hands of uncertainty. When you go into the waters, there's no promise the boat's not going to sink. When you go to the waters, there's no promise that the storm won't come. When you go into the waters, you leave the safety of secure land into an unknown. You're putting your trust, your faith into something beyond what you can see and feel below you. And you have to trust that the one you're getting in the boat with is your Savior. And so I love this, that he says, hey, if you're willing to go the land way to heaven, maybe you don't trust Jesus. If you're willing to walk the long way around, I'll meet you on the other side, you might not find him there. You just want the safety and the security, the land way. You're not willing to go the waters with him. And so they're in this boat, and things are looking really bad. And remember that 4 of these guys, these are their boats. They've been on boats their whole life, and they're still the ones waking up Jesus and going, hey, we're going to die here. They should have had every knowledge and confidence of how to run this thing, and they're in a panic. And if something doesn't change soon, they're assuming, hey, we're going to go under. I'm going under, Jesus. And it's just this great picture of it's not a big boat. Like they're probably all doing stuff, and there's a tiny covered spot 4 feet away that Jesus is sleeping in. Like, it's like, no way, Jesus. This is like Victoria baking. No way you're going to do that right now. There's no way you're sleeping. You're literally falling off the bench, Jesus. This isn't working. You're still asleep. What are you doing? How do you sleep in this time? Fully at peace, fully comforted. There's no way. And they're just staring at him like this, like I am with you, this little boat, saying, Jesus, this is crazy. And they just walk over and nudge him, right? This isn't this massive thing where they have to go under and find him and, wake him up from his beautiful slumber. He's just right there in the wind, howling by him. How is he asleep? And sometimes this is the clearest analogy of how we live life, I think. That we are in this boat with Jesus. We trust him. We say, I'm going to go with the waters with you. And then we are in the water. Things start to get rocky, and where, our marriage is falling apart. I'm stressed. My kids are making me anxious. I can't do this anymore. My job is depressing. I have, nothing to live for. My finances are everywhere. Jesus, why are you asleep in my life? There's no way you should not be responding. I'm praying. I'm crying out. I'm with you. I'm pursuing you. Why are you not responding to me? We all feel like the disciples in our life. Are you there? Are you listening? Do you care? Will I make it through this? And notice this. They wake him up, and Jesus doesn't look at the storm and calm it right then. He looks at his disciples and says, why are you afraid? Why do you have no faith? And he deals with the disciples' unbelief before the storm. Why are you afraid, you of little faith? He doesn't look at the storm and say, yeah, it's not that bad. The wind and waves, they're okay. He doesn't minimize what's happening. He doesn't deal with the storm. He doesn't say, it's not that bad, it's fine, you're overreacting. He acknowledges and says, listen, this is a storm, but then he looks at the disciples and says, why are you afraid though, and you have little faith? So he addresses not the storm, but their view of his power and authority in their life. One pastor said it this way, that the problem is not that they had an improper view of the storm. The problem is they had an improper view of who Jesus was. It's not that they need to minimize their view of the storm. They needed to maximize their view of Jesus. It's not that the storm isn't too big. It's that their faith was too small. I'm not saying your storms don't matter. I'm not saying you won't have trial, temptation, pain, loss, suffering. Storms exist in your life. And I know in my life, when I have a storm, far too common, do I look and I see the storm and I make it way bigger than what God could ever be in my life or could ever do. And I fear the storm. And I say, God, you can't deal with this. You can't handle this. You can't change this. You can't make a difference. And I fear the storm. And I'm sure he's looking at me and say, you of little faith, why are you afraid? And this is what Jesus does. He gets up. He deals with their view of his power and authority. He says, have I not shown you anything? As I casted out demons, as I healed people, as I'm doing miracle after miracle after miracle, and you still doubt. And in your life, hindsight's 20/20. There's a reason we say that, because we need to look back and say, what has he done in my life to prove that he is powerful and he cares and he has purpose for me and vision for me? And he gets up, he says, little faith, why are you afraid? And then just with a word, he speaks to the storm and it's calm. It's gone. He rebukes the wind and the waves, and there was a great calm. And this is the encouragement, the promise for you, that if you sojourn with Jesus, true discipleship, wherever there are great storms in your life, there will be a great calm to follow. If you trust Jesus, great storms will have great calm. And the disciples then marvel at Jesus as calming, as this moment came, and their whole perception, their whole outlook on who Jesus was just expanded in that moment. They saw him and they said, wow, who is this man? Who is this man that can calm the storm? And they probably would have thought back to the Psalms, right? In the Psalms 107:29, it says, he calmed the storm to a whisper and the waves of the sea were hushed. Psalm 89:9 says, you rule over the raging sea. When its waves mount up, you still them. This is God doing these things. And these men would have known these verses, looked at Jesus and said, he just calmed the storm with a word. Who is this man? Jesus with power and authority. And it probably would start to click a bit for them that this is not just a normal guy who has some power, even though sea obeys him. And there's this shift in their life of fear of the storm to fear of the Lord. Who is this guy? In Mark 4, the parallel account, it says that the disciples, when Jesus calmed the storm, were terrified when they said, how? Who? How is this possible? And when they saw Jesus, not in a way they're afraid of him or they think he's going to hurt them or they can't be close to him, but the power he held was terrifying. Who is he? Fear of the Lord. And sometimes in our life, we think that we need to fear the wrong things. We need to fear suffering. We need to fear, the bad diagnosis, storms in our marriages, storms in our kids. We need to fear these things in our life, and then we just put Jesus to the side. And this is what I want to tell you, that he has real power and authority that he continually shows. And it's not just in these stories in the Bible. It's not these accounts of who Jesus is. It can happen here and now when you follow him and when you cry out to him. Guess what? He has power to change your situation, to change your life, to change the direction, to change your habits, to change your patterns of sin. And he's saying, I want you to fear me in a way, not of you don't love me, I'm afraid of you, but in fearing the power that he could put in your life. The power to say, you know what, the storm is done. You don't have to fear it anymore. We fear a holy, righteous God who has power and love to calm the storm. And Aaron, you can come up. And we're going to worship that God. And in with our words and with our heart and with our mind and our spirit. And it's not just words on a screen. The reason we worship is because we respond and we say, I want to sojourn with Jesus. I want to follow him. I want to see that power. I want to experience what he has for me on the way. And then we sing and we attune our hearts and we confess and we believe and we practice this worship of saying this is who Jesus is, his power and authority over our lives. Then when the cold, bleak wind of sorrow blows, there's a calm and a comfort in the presence of Jesus Christ. When the hot blast of passion blows, there's peace and security in the presence of Jesus Christ. When the storms of doubt seek to uproot the very foundation of the faith, there's a steady safety in the presence of Jesus Christ. In every storm that shakes the human heart, there is peace with Jesus Christ. That's the promise. That's the promise of him calming this storm. And it happens with our discipleship to him that we're not too rushy and rammy, but we're also not slacking off and lazy. But we say, I want to journey with you. I want to learn from you. And I want to experience what it means to have a calm life. When the storms come, I don't have to be afraid, but I can actually fear the power that you will bring into the storm. Lord, just make that real. Don't make it something we just talk about, something we just think about. Make it real. Remind us that we are sojourning with you, that there's no place to arrive, but you are the arrival, you're the presence, you're the journey. That we disciple under you, not the things of our life that we want to fix or worship or uphold, but that we'd follow you, God, into every storm, that we'd cast onto the waters, leaving the foundation of earth, and that our faith would be okay to go into the wind and the waves. Because we know where you are, there's going to be a calm. We know that you have authority over everything. So remind us of that this morning. Challenge us to seek you, that we wouldn't fear the storm, Lord, but we'd pursue you. And ultimately, we'd worship you. We'd know who you are, not just some man, but with all authority, all power, all love, consistency in every aspect of our life. Amen.
Let's all stand together.